I've been in nutraceutical sales for a while, but my background is in nutrition therapy. I just geek out on this topic. I love the topic of nutrition, and obviously that'll encompass supplements. And so I pivoted to nutraceutical sales so I could still geek out with my tribe. So let me give a quick just snippet on Cellcore, because there's so many supplement companies out there that, I mean, as a patient, it's hard enough to like sift through the good, the bad, and the ugly. But then, like, even as a practitioner, there's a lot of practitioner lines out there that it can get really overwhelming of like vetting out what's good, what's, you know, what you actually want to put your name behind to prescribe to patients. So, thanks to Gateway, they came on board with Cellcore. But we're not you've got really good foundational nutritional companies out there. Like, these guys use Ortho. And Ortho has like 400 some products, right? So that's like your fish oils, your B vitamins, your adrenal support, your gut support, like all the things, you know, just general foundational nutrition. Cellcore is a boutique brand, and we're very specific in the niche of detox. And then I say that word lightly because detox is just so watered down. Everybody's got some detox. I'm sure you guys have everybody that's in the room has probably done some detox to some degree at some point in their life. But we really are kind of the front runners in the detox game, and it is because of our binding technology, which is the carbon technology behind how we're able to pull toxins out of the body. So there's the allopathic model, right? And there's just been this huge shift away from the allopathic model into functional medicine or integrative medicine, because, right, we're not obviously getting better in a 7-minute appointment with an allopathic doctor. So in the functional medicine space, everything is very customized. You know, everybody's a snowflake. Everybody gets their own unique plan. So kind of like take it one step back, and that's the sweet spot where you would use Cellcore, because everybody has a dirty terrain. And when I say the terrain, it's like the biological ecosystem of the inside of our body, and it is influenced by the environment that we are bathing ourselves in, right? So the environment today is not the same as it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 100 years ago, right? Like, there's a trend, people are getting sicker, and a huge piece of that is in alignment with how sick our earth is and just the amount of chemicals we're dumping into the earth. So it's, you know, our bodies are obviously picking that up, and the animals too. So Cellcore, we have a very small catalog. We only have 25 products, and we have obviously a focus on parasites as well, which is what we're going to get into here. But Cellcore, basically, anybody would be a great candidate to go through Cellcore products, because we all can do work to clean up the terrain of our body. It's the terrain of the body that is driving the disease processes. It is not these erroneous germs and microbes which has been shoved down our throats. You know, it's not the bacteria, it's not the virus, it's not the fungus. They are just a byproduct, and they flare up and become problematic if the terrain is off. So Cellcore is in the business of cleaning up the terrain of the body. So on your guys' chairs, and sorry I didn't give it to the staff in the back, but what these guys have is a parasite questionnaire. So if you feel like filling that out and kind of seeing where you land, obviously it's a subjective test. Depending on how you answer, you know, might sway you one way or the other. But really the take home is, like, we all have parasites. And the goal, I don't think it would be appropriate for any practitioner to say, like, I'm going to totally clean you out, eradicate parasites. I just don't think that's possible. Just like you can't totally clear out H. pylori and Candida and Staph and Strep and like all these microbes that we've co-evolved with as a species. Parasites, to a small degree, can serve a beneficial purpose, which I'll touch on. But for the most part, they are problematic because, again, the toxic terrain is what is feeding them. And then the Parakit is what we'll be talking about as a solution to get these parasites under control in your body. Who do you guys think has parasites? And I gave the answer away, right? Everyone's got them, right? So, like, what do you guys think are sources? I mean, I think in America we have a false sense of security if I've never left the country. I mean, it's like, it's only if I've been to a third world country, or like, you know, specific lab markers based, like, you know, if your esophaphils are high, lab high. Otherwise, the medical practice, you know, doctors, they probably are going to just kind of like poo-poo that. So Yeah, so you guys do. We all do. So where do we pick parasites up from? So this is just a small sampling. So if you've got dogs sleeping with you, especially around the full moon, we're going to talk about parasites amp up in activity. And they definitely can like go in and out of, your dogs, and then they're in your bed, and maybe they lick your face. Walking barefoot, like you can, walking barefoot in the grass, at the beach. Parasites usually they can be super, super small, microscopic, so you can absorb them through your feet. But also, like, grounding is important too, so let's have some balance. Swimming in lakes, rivers, streams, drinking tap water. If you guys aren't drinking filtered water, if I could just suggest one thing you do for your health is to filter your water. If you're drinking water, just especially living in like any municipality, just the amount of chemicals that they're pumping into your water. You got agriculture runoff and so many other things, but parasites can show up in tap water as well. Sushi, pork are common food exposures. We live in a global food system, so like a lot of our meat and our produce is coming from Central America, South America, China. So it's not this nice little, tight-knit communities with our food coming from a 100-mile radius anymore. Signs and symptoms, so if you just kind of peruse these, if you have one or two of these, it doesn't, mean you have like a super strong, doesn't absolutely connect it to parasites, but parasites are very intertwined, like it can be linked up. So I'll call out a couple of them. Like for somebody who might have a lot of like food sensitivities, distinct from food allergies, that's a really good sign of parasites. And, it's fun to do, gut tests and find out maybe what specific foods you might be sensitive to. And if you're blown up in the red, the first thing I would do is put somebody on a parasite cleanse, because so much of that is linked up with a parasitic kind of overgrowth. Autoimmune diseases, with kids, bedwetting is a pretty positive indication that it's an issue to be dealt with. Seizures too, unexplained seizures. Sometimes it can be a Hail Mary to do a parasite cleanse, and I've had some really good feedback from some of my clinicians clearing up seizures. Sometimes we get so like in nuance in the nitty gritty of like what it could be. If we kind of span out a little bit and do something as simple as a parasite cleanse, it's pretty phenomenal how it can impact some of these bigger, kind of more daunting health issues. So what's the incentive to do a parasite cleanse? Obviously, if you had anything that resonated with that previous slide, cyclical health issues, or if you're just like you're on like a hamster wheel with your healing. So maybe like candida, I'll probably reference that a lot because it's just so common, and it's one that a lot of people can relate to. If you just have like flares and then you feel like you get it under control, maybe with like a supplement protocol, and you feel like you're doing good, and then a couple months later it flares, like you just, whatever that is for you, like that you just feel like you can't fully clear, it keeps coming back to haunt you. It could be related to parasites. So complex chronic illnesses, so as again that previous slide, parasites can trigger a wide range of health issues. For example, they can be behind things like IBS, which is kind of like a blanket diagnosis because the doctor doesn't know what's going on. And I put some, because I'm being conservative, but I think a lot of autoimmune diseases, just because the impact that parasites can have on the two main branches of our immune system. I mentioned our environment is just skyrocketing as far as the toxic load, and I don't think it's getting any better anytime soon. So I think it's like we really just have to take control of, like our health and not, outsource it to anybody, because we have everything we need. I truly do believe that within ourselves to heal. And then you can like have some support along the way. Parasites rob nutrients from the host. Again, they can cause major dysfunction in the immune system, and they can literally obstruct pathways within our organ systems. So like some worms can clog the valves between our intestines or cause issues like, the sphincter that our esophagus drops into our stomach. Like that can cause issues maybe like with acid reflux because it's not fully closing, or maybe the sphincter between, the small intestine dropping into the large intestine, and then, or maybe the sphincter, the otisphincter between the where the gallbladder drops into the small intestine. If that's not, closing properly because of a parasite, infection, maybe that could be leading to SIBO. Like there's just, everything's connected, right? Bile duct too. Parasites love to hide out in the gallbladder, that liver bile duct that drops into the small intestine. So, and that can cause really, really massive issues.
How do they
Go ahead.
know that? Have they found pictures?
So that's a great question. I think muscle testing is a big one. Also, I think like different, I don't know if like any sort of imaging can pick up on that, or if there's actually been like, surgeries where they can like see parasites. I know cadavers is where like you can really get a glimpse of like where parasites are. I think people, generally speaking, probably think of them just like in the GI tract, just because that's where we take in maybe through food and water. But parasites can be head to toe. Like you can have parasites in your brain, in your sinuses, in your joints, in your lungs, in your liver. I mean, they can be everywhere. Eyes, yep, totally. But parasites can act like a Trojan horse. So on one hand, they are beneficial in the sense that they're like a sponge. Like anything in your terrain that we don't want, that's toxic from like a chemical standpoint or like a pathogen standpoint, parasites can act as a safe house and like soak them up. But they can only, it's like a sponge, right? Like if you soak a sponge, it can only hold so much water, and then maybe you drag that sponge across your countertop, like it's gonna leave like little droplets, right? Because it's at capacity. So parasites can hold, I've heard anywhere from like 7 to 10 times their body weight in toxic debris. But again, like they get full at some point, and then they're just gonna kind of ooze out like what they can't fit. This is another piece that can link up with like if you feel like you're just like on this cyclical journey with maybe a pathogen or something that just won't fully heal. And this can be like, I think parasite cleansing would be a good indicator for those folks. Because maybe you've got yourself on like a really good H. pylori protocol, and you're feeling really good on your regimen, and then like 6 to 8 months later you come off your regimen, and if it flares back up, it's probably because you're just retoxifying from the inside out. So how to do Cellcore's parasite cleanse. So you guys have a little handout here. I'll make mine. And this is, if you do decide to go ahead, this is the Para Kit from Cellcore. So it comes with 4 products. Gateway was so kind to add on Para 4 as well. So I'll go through each of these products, but we've got 4 parasite products. It's really easy, Para 1, 2, 3, and 4. Very generally speaking, think of Para 1 as the best solution for GI parasites. So it's organic Mimosa pudica seed, and it's a really sticky seed material. And not only is it really great to help, it's just, it's a great gut scrubber. So it's gonna help to really pull parasites out, but it does so much more with biofilms, with dysbiosis. It's a great kind of mucoid plaques. You might see some weird stuff come out. So I debated putting pictures of like things that you might potentially see come out, and I didn't, but maybe I should have. I don't know. They were in there, and then I deleted the slide. You do? Okay, I'll send the Gateway staff, and then if you guys want to disseminate that to your patients. Just know if you don't see any like obvious worms come out, it doesn't mean that you're not passing parasites. Like most parasites are naked to the invisible eye, so you very well could be passing stuff and you just don't even know it. Or you very well might see like obvious worms. I mean, I've seen worms like 6 feet long. I mean, it's in like where you have to pull them out. Yes, yes. That's like a little bit more dramatic of an example, but it does happen.
I've heard, like in third world countries, they'll put like a bowl of blood in the person's nose, and they don't have the grippers, and they'll pull and pull out.
I'll give you some hints on how to like do your sinuses too. But it might not, I mean, just expect your stools to change. So you guys don't have to like blow up the Gateway practitioners to be like, is this normal? Like my stools like changed in colors, changed in consistency, like there's plaquey, like it just expect it to change. And, but if it doesn't, that's okay too.
Will it change like the frequency too?
Yeah. Yeah. So what's nice, so Para 1, again, is Mimosa pudica seed. So it's an adaptogen, it's an Ayurvedic adaptogenic herb. And what's nice about adaptogens is it can either, like if you run more constipated, it can kind of help bring you back to center. Or if you run more on the looser side, it can help bring you back to center. But yeah, just overall, yeah, things might sway. Or if you're somebody who's super regular with your bowel movements, like this might definitely disrupt what your normal is, and that's okay. That means your body's working through some layers. Para 2 is going to go a little bit deeper because, again, parasites aren't just beholden to the gut. Para 2 is going to go deeper into like organs in your tissues, so things like liver flukes, lung flukes. And then Para 3 is a liquid that you will, of course, take internally, and that's going deeper yet, more like interstitial spaces, into the blood. So of any of those three, Para 1, 2, and 3, if you're going to herx, and when I say herx, like have any sort of like die-off or any sort of reactions, it'll most likely be from Para 3. That is the most potent product of the three. So I've got some examples of dosing, like beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Since nobody here has ever done a parasite cleanse, I would definitely recommend the beginner dose. And then if you're kind of sailing through it, easy breezy, like don't be afraid to push the envelope. There's no upper level limit of toxicity with these products. It's kind of finding the therapeutic dose for your individual self, to where maybe you start to experience some symptoms and maybe back off just a tiny bit from there. So Para 3, you mentioned using stuff, for your nose. You can use Para 3 in a nasal rinse, and I've seen videos of people with this product pulling worms like out of their nose, which is pretty wild. So it can be really good, like if you're somebody that has seasonal allergies. There's been some pretty phenomenal testimonies with like POTS syndrome. Mold mycotoxins can harbor in your sinuses. So just like the cabin filter in your car is kind of like, what's filtering air coming in, like going down 25, I-25, this is like, the filter for the body. It's one of the first lines of defense for the immune system. So it's good to consider like, irrigating this every now and again. So what I would do is put a single drop, like not a dropper full, like one drop in 6 ounces of distilled, and I underscore distilled water because it is the cleanest, purest water. Whether you have like a Navage or a neti pot or like one of those nasopures, whatever you want to do, and you can equally rinse it up your nose, let it come out, and rinse it up the other side and let it come out. It's a super intense sensation. So that's why I really stress starting with 1 drop. You can go up to 6. I don't even know how somebody would do that. The first time I did that, when you see 1 drop dissipate in 6 ounces of distilled water, it doesn't really look like a lot. So I did another drop, and then I did 1 more for good measure. I had a headache for about 3 days because it just was way too intense of a detox. But yeah, you might find some relief just cleaning out your sinuses too. And then the Para 4 here, which is not part of our Para kit, this was a release we did last year. It's not like we're going any deeper per se as far as like to a cellular level, but this is just kind of some different herbs to kind of fill in the gaps where the first 3 products might have been missing certain nematodes or tapeworms. This is the most gentle product, so it's very fluid in where you can insert this into how you can do this cleanse. And I'm going to go over 2 different ways. So you can do this kit one of 2 ways. So the full moon cycle versus like a 3 to 4 month protocol. So everybody in this room, since nobody's done a parasite cleanse, I would suggest you do this kit plus Para 4 for like 3 or 4 months so that you can catch different egg and larva cycles. Some of these parasites, they can lay hundreds of thousands of eggs in a single day. And then their life cycle can be upwards of a year. So 3 to 4 months, I think, is even, it's a good initial deep dive. Whereas the full moon cycle is better for like once you've done a 3 or 4 month protocol, then maybe a couple times a year you do just a parasite or a para kit around the full moon, which is the best time to do a parasite kit or parasite cleanse because the full moon in all of its glory and the ways it affects the moon cycles and the ocean, like it definitely encourages parasites to come to the surface, and it's a really good time to just like whack-a-mole them down. So it is less time, so it's again, it's a little bit less effective for catching all those life cycles. So melatonin levels decrease and serotonin levels increase around the full moon. That's just a part of our natural circadian rhythm. And parasites feed off of serotonin. It's a great, they have a party inside of you, and they just love the serotonin. So again, you may notice certain symptoms flare around the full moon. Has anybody ever tracked that about themselves? Like in the back of your mind, like you have gout that kind of maybe flares up every now and again, or anything? Does that resonate with anybody? No? Okay. Like ER visits skyrocket around the full moon. Like people just get weird around the full moon. Like they get agitated. And it's, yeah, yeah. There's a reason. Like you maybe need to clean out some parasites.
My mom was a delivery nurse, and they hated it every time a full moon because it was always going to be just an absolute train wreck in the hospital.
Yep.
So yeah, it's
People get more aggressive on the road. I mean, just like their own stuff comes out. There's definitely, and we're going to talk about like the emotional component that parasites can contribute to as well. So again, what I would recommend for everybody in here is to do a 3 to 4 month protocol, and you can start at that beginner dose as your daily dose, and then around the full moon of each of those 3 or 4 months, play with amping up your dose, like 3 to 4 days leading up to, and then you're kind of at that max dose at the full moon, and then you kind of taper down the next 3 to 4 days. It can, it can be like a week, maybe like Wednesday is the full moon, so you're building up and then you're coming back down. But then maybe month 3, like you can maybe have the intermediate dose as like your new kind of base, and then maybe the advanced dose is kind of is your goal for the next full moon. Personally, for me, when I was going through a much longer protocol with Cellcore, there's a couple months, for like 3 to 4 months, I was doing heavy on the parasite stuff, and just to give you a reference of like how high you can go, I was going up to where this says para 1 and 2, 6, so 12 total in the morning and 12 in the evening. I was doing 12 and 12 of each, 10 to 12 of each. So taking like 24, 25 caps in the morning, and then 20, 24 in the evening around the full moon. And for me, that was my sweet spot where like I saw stuff, like definitely purge. And it's really, really rewarding. Like whether it grosses you out or not, like there's something just like freeing to get that stuff out of you. I do want to mention too, so you guys will see different columns here. So wake up, morning, noon, evening, bedtime. So morning, noon, evening column, that's breakfast, lunch, dinner. But if for whatever reason, maybe you do intermittent fasting, or they don't have to be taken with food during those morning, noon, evening, but you can take those products with food. Wake up and bedtime, para 1 and para 2 need to be taken away from food, and all other supplements, medications. So I recommend para 1 and para 2 to sit on your nightstand with a glass of water, and when you first wake up, just slam them, and then wait at least 30 minutes. If you can, wait an hour before having any breakfast. But 30 minutes is fine too, like if you gotta get your day going and get out the door. And then again at bedtime, just take those products right before you go to bed, and they can work on in your gut while you sleep. Para 1 specifically works best in the gut alone, and then para 2, they just work really well together, so we lump those two together. So I'll just say this, since I'm sure maybe 1 or 2 people in here are on thyroid medication, or if there's any medication that it's part of your routine that you take it right when you first wake up, just do that so we don't mess up what your pharmaceutical drugs are. And then 30 minutes later, take the para 1 and the para 2, and then if you can wait 30 minutes then from there to take, to take other supplements or your breakfast. The only other product I haven't talked about yet is the biotoxin binder. So at Cellcore, we have 3 main binders, and biotoxin binder is one of them. If you decide to do the 3 or the 4 month long parasite kit, and you have to have some help from the staff at Gateway, I would sub out the biotoxin binder and I'd rotate through each one of our binders as you go through those couple months, so that the binders are what's going to hit different like toxicities in your gut, or sorry, in your on your whole terrain as a systemic terrain. So biotoxin binder, it's our top selling binder that's going to go after obviously biotoxins, but like mold, mycotoxins, plastics, phthalates, BPAs, that's ammonias. I mean, it goes after a long laundry list of issues, but you definitely don't want to stir the pot with pulling all these parasites out, because they're not going to go down without a fight. They're going to release a lot of their metabolic waste. It's like, I always give the example or the analogy of like, if you have like a tenant, like if you have any rental properties, you evict somebody, like they don't leave the place nice and tidy, like they just probably just leave a mess and they destroy the place, and then you've got a mess to clean up. So you don't want their waste, and like I said, they're a Trojan horse, so if they're holding on to a bunch of like a high pathogenic load or a bunch of toxins, they're going to be releasing all of that plus their own waste, and you want a binder to kind of come in behind and Pac-Man all that crud up and take it out. For some folks, the biotoxin binder can be constipating. So if you guys are at any point, if you're not pooping every single day, let these guys know so that they can layer in some bowel movement support. So we have a product called Bowel Mover, or you can just go get some magnesium at like Natural Grocers, or they might already have something for just to keep you going regularly. You don't want any clogs, like when detox in general, but especially with biotoxin binder, you want that stuff moving through you. Any questions on any
Do
of
you
that?
suggest taking magnesium while doing the protocol, just to help?
You can. I mean, I think magnesium in general is something that everybody would benefit from taking, this aside.
Right.
But I mean, obviously there's lots of different forms of magnesium, so like an oxide would be really good for bowel movements.
Okay.
So if you already trend on the constipated side, I would layer in some support.
Okay.
And if you're not pooping every day now, get that fixed first before you do this, which they can help you with that.
What do you think, magnesium? Do you think it's in the top 10 of what everybody should be taking?
I think like top 2.
Top 3?
Yeah. I think it's involved in so many enzymatic reactions. I think it's the underlying reason like people have vitamin D deficiencies. I think it is something that is so important to take. So either like a magnesium, or like I said, we have a product called Bowel Mover. It's a dozen different herbs, and there's a tiny bit of anti-parasitic even in our Bowel Mover product, so that can start getting the process, like your body primed, and then you can start doing the para products.
Shannon,
Yeah.
I might have missed this, but did you say that with or without food, does it matter?
Yeah, so the first column, like the wake up column and the bedtime column on those dosing charts, so para 1 and para 2 need to be taken away from all food and all supplements. If for whatever reason para 1 wasn't in the mix, you could take para 2 with food. But para 1 and para 2 do work really well together, so take those 2 away, and then para 2, 3, 4, and the binder can all be taken with other supplements. And binders too, let me say this, Cellcore is very unique in that you can take our binders with food. If you're on any prescription drugs, CYA, or like just a general CYA, take the binder 2 hours away from any prescription pharmaceuticals. Not that it's going to bind up the drug like what we would think like with activated charcoals or zeolites or clays, or if anybody's taken any of those types of products. Our binders there's a very unique science behind the humic and the fulvic acids that are in our products that can actually enhance absorption. So it might kind of overshoot the goal of what your doctor has you on that drug for in the first place. But yeah, our binders, they can be taken with food. So from a practitioner standpoint, whenever you put a patient on binders, it's super frustrating because compliance usually tanks with you guys because it's hard to remember to take those supplements in between meals. So that's really helpful with our binders. You can take them with meals. And if you, again, since I'm encouraging you guys all to do the 3 or 4 month protocol, so there's biotoxin binder, and then we have a binder called Virad Chem that's going to go after like viruses, viral byproducts, radioactive elements, and like chemicals, like more industrial chemicals and solvents. And then our third binder is called HMET for heavy metals and environmental toxins. So that's kind of like obviously heavy metals, but then the ET, like your agriculture chemicals, like atrazine, glyphosate is a big one. I mean, there's so many environmental toxins that we're exposed to. So I would recommend rotating through each binder if you're going to do the longer parasite cleanse.
In no specific order, just rotate through.
I would do the biotoxin binder first, and then I would do ViRedChem, and then I would do HMET, just because the HMET is, of the three, is going to be the most potent.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we kind of talked about this, but so it's just a good time to do the parasite cleanse, so this kind of adds to the juice of that. So common parasite die-off reactions. So we'll have this conversation because it might not be just this like really nice, pleasant experience. So if you are experiencing any of these bullet points, and this is not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the most common, there's a couple of things you can do. Most commonly, just come back down on your dosing. Like if you're going really aggressive and you start experiencing some of this stuff, maybe come back to the intermediate or the beginner. Or if you're on the beginner dose and you're experiencing some pretty intense herxing, you can go into actually opening up capsules if you need to, or just maybe taking the morning dose and skipping the evening dose. If even just the morning dose, like now we're starting to get into like pediatric dosing, but if you have to open up any of those capsules, you can mix them with food or water, apple juice, yogurt, whatever you want to mix it with. Para 1, it's super sticky, so it does not mix well with water. So if you do have to open up the Para 1 capsule, mix it with like olive oil, coconut oil. It's better absorbed with a fat. And also if you're experiencing any, there's definitely some overlap with this list and, kind of assessing if you have parasites in the first place or an overload of parasites.
Now, there's a really good chance you're going to experience some of that stuff anyway, right? It's just maybe it's too intense to back off a little bit.
Yeah. Also, just be super tuned in with, are you pooping every day? Because drainage, I'm going to talk about drainage too. Drainage is so important. So when anybody is going through a detox, whether it's parasite related or just a general detox, again, I can't stress enough, you've got to be eliminating every day. And if you are, then that's where I would start tweaking the dosing. But the first question to ask yourself is, are you pooping every day? And if you're not tuned in with that, then get tuned in with your bowel movement. So another side of the parasite cleanse that you might experience is the emotional side, which is really, really prevalent. So parasites, they can change the environment of their host body to make their life easier and make it easier to thrive. So including neurotransmitters of the brain, and a lot of those neurotransmitter production occurs in the gut. So the brain's neurotransmitters affect them because there are receptors on their bodies that can read these chemical signals. Excuse me. And the body's neurotransmitters can disrupt the parasite's ability to attach themselves to our cells, our tissues, our gut lining, the ease of how they feed, their muscle coordination, and their reproduction. So that's not ideal for the parasites. So again, when you start to try and push them out, this is like a part of like their fight back, and they can absolutely like affect like your mental emotional state for the sake of their own survival. So this is some of what might come up. So again, like if you're going through a parasite cleanse, if you're not a person that's typically angry or anxious or depressed, just know that it could be linked to the parasite cleanse that you're doing. Increased stress, insomnia too. Remember how it affects like the melatonin. So again, you can just adjust the dosing, like if it's affecting sleep patterns, because I've got 2 little kids right now, and like they're both giving me insomnia, so I know like how crazy that can make you feel. So again, just adjust the dosing as you need to. And And again, these can all be linked back to reasons to do a parasite cleanse in the first place if you're already experiencing some of these symptoms. But if this isn't typical for you, it might come out with parasites. Some supportive actions to take. So sugar, parasites love sugar. So it's a good food source to cut them off. Encourage gut motility. So again, I've mentioned if you're not pooping every day, you've got to fix that. Seek emotional support resources. Liver function, supporting liver function is really important as well, because we're going to probably start dumping toxins in the liver and the gallbladder. So TUDCA is another product from Cellcore that's really, really supportive for the gallbladder. It's a bile salt that our liver does naturally make, but it's very cleansing to the gallbladder. So if anybody's ever been told by a doctor that you've got a stagnant, or maybe they want to take it altogether, don't let them do that. They have access to a protocol from Cellcore that has literally saved thousands of gallbladders from being taken out, and TUDCA is a main player in that. KL support is kidney liver support, castor oil packs. Has anybody ever done castor oil packs? Do you know what that is? Good. Okay, so those are super supportive at night too for better sleep and just liver support. And then taking the carbon technology, so that's your binder. So you might maybe need to up the binder too to overcompensate from maybe what those parasites are dumping. Time is it? 6:48. So any questions on that piece of it? Okay, I tried to keep it a little, you can get real nitty gritty with this stuff. So if this sounds good and everybody's on board and wants to go parasite cleansing, but if you're thinking that sounds just like one component of like a detox, so you can go deeper, much deeper. So with Cellcore, I mentioned we have 25 products in our catalog. So we have 4 binders, 4 drainage products, and 4 parasite products, and then some ancillary support. So if you want to incorporate more support, when we talk about detox, that's distinct from drainage support. So if you're going to go on any detox, whatever it is, I think we focus so much on the actual detox itself. We also don't focus on the exit pathways. So if you're going to go in and start picking stuff out of all these storage sites, but you're not also focusing, like low-hanging fruit, again, like if you're not pooping every day, then your liver bile duct and your gallbladder is going to get congested, right? And if that gets backed up, then your liver is going to get super taxed, and that's going to get really full and congested and stagnant. And once that's stagnant, it just keeps going up this funnel, right? So if anybody in this room has any sort of health symptoms, complaints, diagnoses, part of that issue is going to be like you've got to work on your drainage funnel. Like one that I'm thinking off the top of my head, Vibrant America, they have a stool sample that will run for 24 different types of parasites. I think most run like 7 or 8 types of parasites, and there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of parasites out there. And we talked about parasites are not just in the gut, they're systemic. So I think you'll probably be discouraged by your medical doctor to even think parasites are a problem. I would more go off of symptomatology, that parasite questionnaire, and again, like if you've never done a parasite cleanse, you're probably going to reap some benefit from doing it. So we've got 2 co-founders for Cellcore, and Dr. Todd Watts is one of them, and his kind of joke is like the most easy and free test you can do to test for parasites is to like take your 2 fingers and like put them right here, and like if you feel a pulse, then you need to do a parasite cleanse. There you go.
Can I share an interesting story? So Dr. Dawes, who we bought the practice from,
And Dr. Dahl was making a recommendation. He diagnosed this young boy with parasites, and so he ended up giving a cleanse to the mom and said, "Here, your son needs this. He has parasites." And she was skeptical about it, so she ends up taking it to the medical doctor, and the medical doctor says, "That chiropractor doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't have parasites." So she comes back, tells Dr. Dahl that, and Dr. Dahl said, "He does. I'm going to give this to you because your son needs it. He does have parasites." And so she takes it, the son starts taking it, and tons of stuff came out in his stool sample. So she collects the stool sample, brings it back to Dr. Dahl and said, "He did have parasites, look." And then so he's like, "Yep, I told you." And then the mom was like, "So what should I do with the stool sample?" And she was like, "I'd take it back to your medical doctor."
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you said that too. So Dr. Todd, the one that does this test, he's got a functional practice up in Boise, Idaho. That's where Cellcore's headquartered out of. And he got, he was doing stool samples to like test for parasites, and he was getting so many false negatives. He's like, "I know these patients." He's like, "I know my patients have parasites." So he stopped wasting their money testing, and he just started treating them like they had parasites, and they were dumping parasites. He was for a time he was using, before Cellcore even existed, he was using Mimosa pudica, but the plant material, and then his Ayurvedic pharmacist in town got in just like kind of like a random batch of Mimosa pudica seed, and he was like, "Hey, give this a try for your patients." They kind of do like a little pilot study with his patients. And there was a drastic shift, and even like just people were dumping stuff with the seed material, and it was for his own kind of journey with Lyme and mold. It was just pivotal for him to kind of turn the corner with Lyme, and that was the case for a lot of his patients too. But the patients that were having lab negatives for their stool samples, I mean, and then when they were like pooping out parasites, he actually had a couple of his patients like scoop it up in the sample collector, send it to the lab to test it for parasites with obvious worms, and it was still coming back lab negative.
No.
So I don't think it's worth, if that answers your question. Well, yeah. Yeah.
So this is maybe random, but so I had COVID a year ago, February, and I don't know, maybe day 7 or day 8, I started feeling like, it literally felt like there were bugs in my sinuses. It was the weirdest thing, and then I lost my sense of smell and my sense of taste. And I got horrible brain fog, and I'm still struggling with the brain fog, so this terrifies me to do. And parasite cleansing, more brain fog? Are you kidding? This I won't be able to think at all.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, COVID is a weird one. Like people, I think at this point any symptom under the sun can be labeled under the category of like long haulers.
yeah.
It's almost like whatever was brewing in your system, like COVID just brought it to the surface and like is forcing people to deal with, Epstein-Barr, people with Lyme, it brought all this stuff up to, like, you have to deal with it. So I encourage you to lean into it.
Yeah.
And just go, if you know you're really sensitive or you've already kind of got, your constitution's a little bit weakened, just come at it really, really low. But if there's anything to, like, we've learned about, like, COVID and the immune system, I mean, so many people just crashed. And parasites crash the immune system. So ivermectin was a super controversial, like, prescription, right? And what is ivermectin? It's an anti-parasitic drug. So, like, and it was very, very successful. So one thing with ivermectin is it'll go after the worms, but with us, para-2 and para-3 will also go after the eggs and the larvae. So it's a much more comprehensive approach. But parasites can tip the scales with I think this might be going too deep into T1/Th2 balance of the immune system. Parasites tank one and it gives rise to the other, and the one that it gives rise to is viruses. So if you're super got a lot of parasites in your system, it makes you more susceptible to a viral infection.
What if somebody has like heart disease, myocarditis?
As far as like linking in
Is
this,
it product safe?
Yeah, there's really no contraindications, because whatever you're gonna like shout out as far as like I've got this condition or like this disease, like there's an underlying component of toxicity, and parasites are kind of like a little offshoot of that toxicity conversation. So yeah, absolutely. I would just, again, if there's any concerns, just start low, and if there's any prescription drugs involved, take it away from the binder.
So once you do the cleanse and you go through 4 months, are you always on these supplements? Is that
Good question. So with us, the goal is to get off of like a majority of these supplements. I think just the world we live in today, there's going to be things you can take just for like maintenance or like to optimize your health. And what that means for each of one of us might be tweaked a little bit, but when you come out on the other end of a detox, whether you do our 4 month or we got like a really like a deeper comprehensive 9 month, we don't come out in a bubble. Like we still live in the world we live in. So I think we just reassess like the initial chief complaints that were on your initial intake. Like let's revisit those at the end of the 4 months. Has anything cleared up? If it has, great. Or maybe it's a 50% improvement. Or maybe we had a really, like, things cleared up, but now I've got like 5 new chief complaints that previously weren't there, and that's where things can get dicey with patients, because that can be frustrating. It's like, what are you doing to me? Like, these things got better, but now I have new symptoms that I never had before. Maybe I had it when I was 5, and it hasn't surfaced since I was 5. Like, that's good. Like, that's a good thing. Like, the body's working through different layers of healing. Maybe we're so indoctrinated to be fearful and suppress symptoms, when it is the body's, albeit very cryptic way, but it is a way that the body's communicating like something's out of whack. So I think that we should be thankful for symptoms, because otherwise we die. Like, they're what slow the body down to allow it to heal. What did you? And I'm sorry, I don't even know if I answered your question. Does that?
just how long?
How long? Yeah. So
like if you
yeah,
do a
revisit,
cleanse,
so
is it?
Yeah, so let's revisit like what's happening now 4 months later. Like maybe we made really good progress in lab markers, but maybe like a little nuance, maybe like mold is still present for you, or maybe like H. pylori is still kind of a flared up. Like we have specific, like we've got a dozen different kits that we can do a targeted approach after doing a systemic kind of head to toe cleanse. And if you're feeling good and you're feeling great, maybe we just do some like mitochondrial support. For me, I love our Tide Cup product. Like that's something that I personally have in my daily regimen. And then maybe just like rotating through the binders, like 1 cap a day or every other day, just to keep your head above water. Yeah.
Cool. Is it on? No, not yet. Okay. All right. Well, good question, Joel. So thank you so much, Shannon, for the information you shared. And just to wrap up, y'all, so our whole Gateway team, we're all doing this because I'm dying to know what's going to come out of my body. And so, I know, we're going to say a prerequisite is you got to bring a stool sample to the workshop tonight, but that probably would have deterred a lot of people from showing up. But just to share with you guys, we have these workshops on a monthly basis. And the reason why we have these workshops is to be able to allow you to learn more about health and to figure out ways of where you can dive into how you can help yourself have higher levels of health. And for example, we are often asked by our patients, how often should I get adjusted? You only need to get adjusted if you don't hold your adjustment, right? So if you get adjusted and you hold your adjustment, you're fine. But there is stressors of life, and there's also, you could have hormone imbalances and things like that that's going to make things not hold that adjustment quite so well. And certainly parasites can wreak havoc on the body as well. So as long as you're holding those adjustments, then you're going to be able to be in optimal health the entire time. So we hold these workshops. Next month, we're going to be doing another workshop. We always have them on the last Tuesday at 6 o'clock of the month, last Tuesday of the month. And it's going to be on allergies and asthma. And so There are certain recommendations that we can make a huge difference in dealing with allergies and asthma. And if you haven't heard my story, when I was little, I had a very serious case of asthma. And it's not fun when you're in middle school and you're having an asthma attack and you're falling down, you can't even breathe, and all the middle school kids are laughing at you, you know. And that's not fun. Middle school kids can be ruthless. But it's through a specific series of chiropractic adjustments I have never had asthma since. Now, there are also things that you can take, supplementation and things that can make a huge difference. And next month, our workshop is going to be on allergies and asthma. So if you know anyone who's struggling with that, invite them out. These are free workshops. They're open not just to our patients, but to the community. So if you know people who are struggling, bring them out. They can get a chance to meet us, learn a little bit about health as well. And that's why we do these body signal workshops. Yes. Just so you know, if any of y'all want to take advantage of that, Shannon, hopefully you can be around to answer any other private questions one-on-one. But we have certain amount of kits here, so you can pick those up right now and start that cleanse.
There was a raffle, I'm thinking that.
Oh yeah, there is a raffle. That's right. Thank you. Who has that?
I wrote one in.
Christy!
Oh, way to go, Christy. You do.
We expect you to let us know how your parasites.
No.
This one, if you follow
Visual proof.
if you follow the beginner dosing, this will last you a month. So if you amp up around the full moon, or if you're really pushing the envelope, you're gonna burn through this in probably 2 or 3 weeks. So just start with a kit,